Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Pro-Revenge Story. Background: my cousin Julia, 23F, recently opened up her own salon. Since she was young, she taught herself how to thread wax eyebrows and developed a passion for makeup and hairstyling. Everyone in our extended family would come to her for their monthly beauty needs and special events. In 2023, while working a full-time office job, she renovated her basement into a cozy salon space. She now takes clients in her at-home salon during her free time, and her reviews are consistently excellent. Her sister Amy helps with social media marketing and community outreach, while I manage the financial aspects like budgeting and pricing. We're all incredibly supportive and proud of her success. The salon has become our shared passion project. During the ongoing health crisis of 2024 to 2025, her business faced significant challenges. We implemented strict safety protocols and stayed current with local health regulations. These measures included one client at a time policy, temperature screening, mandatory masks and face shields, glove requirements, and thorough sanitization between clients. Whenever our city entered lockdown phases, we promptly closed the salon as it wasn't classified as an essential service. Incident: our city entered another lockdown from mid-December 2024 through January 2025. The salon had been closed since the restrictions began, and we'd updated all our social media platforms to inform clients about the temporary closure. Enter Mrs. Turner, our Karen. She spotted a promotional post from September about a special package discount and immediately commented, "I can't believe you're operating during lockdown when legitimate businesses like mine have to stay closed." The post was clearly dated from September, when salons were permitted to operate under safety guidelines. She completely ignored our recent posts announcing our closure. Julia hadn't noticed her comment initially. The next day, 2 officers appeared at Julia's door while she was at her doctor's appointment. They spoke with my Aunt Maria, who has limited English proficiency. She explained that Julia wasn't home and offered to call her. The officers seemed skeptical and insisted on entering the house. Maria called Julia, who asked if they had a warrant. When they confirmed they didn't, Julia told her mother, "Mom, don't let them in. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The officers left but returned 30 minutes later, again demanding to see Julia. When Julia finally reached them by phone, they explained someone had reported her business for operating during lockdown. Julia quickly connected the dots to Mrs. Turner's comment and clarified the situation. The officer apologized, and we thought that was the end of it. Mrs. Turner revealed herself through a series of messages. Mrs. Turner: "Hi, can I schedule an appointment?" Julia: "Hello, we're currently closed due to lockdown restrictions. We'd be happy to book you once restrictions lift." Mrs. Turner: "Oh, that's weird. My friend was there yesterday." Julia: "That's impossible. We're strictly closed during lockdown." Mrs. Turner: "Whatever. I know the police visited. Have fun with that." Julia: "I don't appreciate you spreading false information and wasting police resources." Mrs. Turner: "I own a spa that's following the rules, unlike you. My mother reported you. Why don't you go back where you came from instead of causing problems here?" Revenge. After Julia blocked Mrs. Turner, I couldn't let go of the racist comment and how she'd frightened my aunt. The mention of her owning a spa caught my attention, so I started investigating. I discovered Mrs. Turner operated her spa, Glowing Grace Beauty, from her home. Looking through her business page, I noticed recent client reviews during lockdown periods. While these could have been delayed reviews from previous appointments, I needed to dig deeper. I found her Instagram page and decided to use her own tactics. Creating a new account under the name Jenny Smith, I followed her and sent a message. Me: "Your work looks amazing. Could you tell me about your pricing?" Mrs. Turner: "Thanks, hun. What services are you interested in?" Me: "The BB Glow Facial looks incredible." Mrs. Turner: "That's my specialty. Usually $150, but I'm running a special. Buy one, get one free." Me: "That's such a great deal. When can you fit me in?" Mrs. Turner: "What area are you in? During lockdown, I'm doing house calls only." Bingo. Not only was she operating, but she was traveling to clients' homes, also against regulations. I fabricated a story about my home being unsuitable and asked about meeting at an alternate location. She readily provided her address, 742 Maple Street. I joined several community groups she participated in and found a recent post advertising January specials. Armed with evidence, I submitted a detailed report to the health authorities, including screenshots, her address, and full name. A week later, I checked the incident report number. To my surprise, this wasn't her first violation. She'd previously received a $750 fine for serving clients during the first lockdown. This time, authorities imposed a $10,000 fine and suspended her business license. Checking her Instagram one last time, I found a furious post. To whoever reported me, you've destroyed my business. I will find out who you are, and you'll regret this. This is my livelihood. I promptly deleted my fake account and left all the community groups. Mrs. Turner learned the hard way that racism and false accusations have consequences. The salon reopened once restrictions lifted, and Julia's business is thriving more than ever. Sometimes karma needs a little help, and playing detective for a day was definitely worth it. The next one is an entitled People story. Looking back, I still can't believe everything that happened. One minute I was living a normal life in my quiet suburban home, and the next I was standing in the middle of rubble, watching firefighters douse the remains of what used to be my living room after a small plane crashed into it. I'll never forget that day. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October, and I was thankfully at work when my phone started blowing up with calls and texts. My neighbor across the street was the first to reach me. "There's been an accident. A plane. It crashed into your house. You need to come home now." I thought it was some kind of sick joke until she sent me the photos. A small single-engine Cessna had lost power and crashed directly into the front of my house. The pilot had survived with injuries, but my home was destroyed. The entire front section collapsed, with fire damage throughout most of the rest. When I arrived, the street was blocked off with emergency vehicles, news crews, and what felt like half the neighborhood standing behind yellow police tape. The fire had been put out, but smoke still hung in the air. I just stood there in shock, watching strangers in uniforms walk through the ruins of my life. The insurance company put me up in a hotel while they processed my claim. The investigation determined the pilot had experienced catastrophic engine failure and had tried to make an emergency landing on the road but clipped a tree and spun into my house. It was nobody's fault, just a freak accident. After a month of paperwork and inspections, I finally got approval to rebuild. The insurance payout would cover most of it, and I was eager to get started. I hired a contractor who specialized in disaster rebuilds, and we got to work designing a new layout. I decided to make a few improvements while I was at it. After all, if I had to rebuild, I might as well end up with something better than before. That's when the HOA decided to make themselves known. I should mention that our HOA was relatively hands-off. We had the usual rules about lawn maintenance and exterior colors, but they rarely enforced anything unless someone complained. I'd lived there for 6 years and had maybe 2 interactions with them total, so I was surprised when I received a certified letter from them 3 days after construction began. Dear homeowner, it has come to our attention that you have begun construction on your property without submitting plans to the Architectural Review Committee, as required by Covenant 7.3 of the HOA bylaws. All construction must cease immediately until proper approval is obtained. I called the HOA president, Richard, immediately. "Richard, my house was hit by a plane. I'm rebuilding it. What's the problem?" "I understand your situation, but rules are rules," he said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "You need to submit your plans to the committee, pay the $250 review fee, and wait for approval before continuing." My house is literally a pile of rubble. I'm living in a hotel. The insurance company approved the rebuild. This is an emergency situation. Emergency or not, the bylaws don't have exceptions. If we let you skip the process, everyone will want exceptions. I took a deep breath. "Richard, who exactly is going to claim a plane crashed into their house as precedent?" "That's not the point. Submit your plans by Friday and we'll try to expedite the review process." I hung up, furious but not wanting to make enemies. I submitted the plans that afternoon, paid the ridiculous fee, and waited. 2 weeks later, I still hadn't heard back. My contractor was getting antsy about the delay and I was paying for each day the crew wasn't working. I called Richard again. "The committee has concerns about your proposed changes," he told me. "The additional dormer window on the second floor isn't in keeping with the neighborhood aesthetic, and we don't approve of the stone facade you've chosen." "Are you kidding me? My entire house was destroyed and you're worried about a window?" "We have standards to maintain. Property values affect everyone." I was seething, but tried to stay calm. "Fine. I'll remove the dormer and change the stone. Can I get approval now so I can continue?" "Submit the revised plans and we'll review them at our next meeting." "When is that?" 3 weeks from now." That was the breaking point. I thanked him politely, hung up, and called my contractor to resume construction immediately. I wasn't going to wait another month while paying for a hotel and an idle construction crew just because the HOA was on a power trip. Construction resumed the next day. By the end of the week, the framing was up, and I was feeling optimistic for the first time since the crash. Then I got another letter, this time threatening legal action for violating the cease construction order. I ignored it. A week later, I was served with actual lawsuit papers. The HOA was suing me for violating the covenants and seeking an injunction to stop construction, plus fines of $100 per day since they'd sent the first letter. I had to hire a lawyer, which was another expense I didn't need, but when I explained the situation to her, she actually smiled. "They picked the wrong house to mess with," she said. "I specialize in HOA disputes, and this is one of the most ridiculous cases I've seen." My lawyer Diane explained that while HOA have broad powers, there are limits, especially in cases of emergency repairs and insurance-approved rebuilds. Plus, there was the matter of the HOA's own bylaws, which she asked me to provide. After reviewing them, she found something interesting. There was indeed a section requiring approval for new construction and major renovations, but there was also a clause about disaster recovery that the HOA had conveniently ignored. In cases of damage due to fire, flood, storm, or other disasters, homeowners may proceed with necessary repairs to restore the property to its pre-disaster condition without prior approval, provided such repairs do not substantially alter the exterior appearance of the structure. The HOA was banking on the fact that most homeowners don't read the entire bylaws and just comply when threatened. But I had a lawyer who did read them, and she was ready to fight. We filed a countersuit claiming harassment and bad faith enforcement of the covenants. We also requested all records of the HOA's architectural reviews for the past 5 years, suspecting selective enforcement. The case moved slowly, as these things do. Meanwhile, I continued with construction, ignoring the daily violation notices piling up in my mailbox. 6 months after the plane crash, my new house was nearly complete, dormer window, stone facade, and all. The day before our court date, Richard called me. "We should discuss settling this matter," he said, his tone notably less confident. "I'm listening," I replied. "If you'll agree to remove the dormer window and pay a reduced fine of $1,000, we'll drop the lawsuit." I laughed. "Richard, I'm not paying you a penny, and I'm not changing anything about my house. Did your lawyer explain what's going to happen in court tomorrow?" He was silent for a moment. "We're trying to be reasonable here." "So am I. Drop the lawsuit completely, reimburse my legal fees, and I won't pursue my countersuit for harassment. That's my only offer." He hung up on me. The next day in court was more satisfying than I could have imagined. The judge, an older woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, didn't bother hiding her incredulity as the HOA's lawyer tried to explain why enforcing architectural guidelines was more important than allowing a homeowner to rebuild after a plane crash. "Let me get this straight," the judge interrupted. "A plane, an actual aircraft, crashed into this man's house, destroying it completely, and your concern was the style of window in the reconstruction?" The HOA lawyer stammered something about property values and community standards. "And you're aware," the judge continued, "that your own bylaws specifically exempt disaster recovery from the approval process?" That's when it became clear the HOA's lawyer hadn't read the bylaws carefully either. His face turned red as he flipped through his papers. The judge was not amused. "I've seen some frivolous HOA actions in my time on the bench, but this may take the prize." She dismissed their case and ordered them to pay my legal fees. But it didn't end there. When my lawyer presented evidence that the HOA had selectively enforced the architectural guidelines, approving similar windows and facades for board members' homes without the formal review process, the judge decided to hear our countersuit immediately. Richard squirmed in his seat as my lawyer methodically presented examples of the HOA's inconsistent enforcement and harassment. By the end, the judge ruled in our favor, finding that the HOA had acted in bad faith. The final judgment, the HOA had to pay my legal fees, around $15,000, acknowledge in writing that my house complied with all covenants, and issue a formal apology to be included in the next neighborhood newsletter. Additionally, the judge ordered the HOA board to attend a course on proper HOA governance and fair enforcement of covenants. As we left the courthouse, Richard approached me with a tense smile. "No hard feelings, I hope," he said, extending his hand. I didn't shake it. "The next board election is in 2 months. I'll be running for president. I suggest you don't." He didn't run, and neither did most of the existing board. I didn't end up becoming president. I nominated my neighbor who had helped me throughout the ordeal, but I did join the Architectural Review Committee. My first motion was to simplify the approval process and create clear, fair guidelines that everyone could understand. My house was finally completed a year after the crash. The dormer window lets in beautiful morning light and the stone facade looks fantastic. Every time I pull into my driveway, I feel a sense of pride, not just for the house itself, but for standing up to bullies who thought they could take advantage of someone in a desperate situation. And the best part? When my next-door neighbor decided to add a similar dormer window to her house, the Architectural Review Committee approved it in less than a week. No drama, no fuss, just reasonable people making reasonable decisions. Sometimes it takes a disaster to bring about positive change. In my case, it took a plane crash, a power-hungry HOA, and a courtroom showdown. But in the end, our whole neighborhood is better for it. The next one is a malicious compliance story. A little bit of background. Due to horrible teachers and my easily intimidated personality, I developed the fear of making mistakes since I was getting yelled at constantly for making some. Now, my body tried to avoid school and the stress that comes with it by developing the habit of vomiting to prove my mother I was sick so I could stay home. Problem was, my body tries it a lot when I get stressed out. Now I can suppress that habit to a certain degree if I focus on my breathing and close my eyes. But sooner or later I have to leave the stress-causing situation or I vomit. Now a little bit of German background since I don't know if this concept exists in other countries. We call it Zeitarbeit and Google translated it to temporarily employment, but long story short, it just means that you don't apply at the company you want to work for, you apply for the Zeitarbeit company, ZC, who then find jobs for you. You go to the ZC, give any important information they need to find you a job you don't totally hate, and if they find something, they call you and you have an interview with the new company you may work for. Then, if you agree to work there, you are a temporarily employee for 6 months. After the 6 months, they either let you go if the company believes it doesn't work out, or you get hired and now have a full job. In theory, that sounds awesome. In practicality, the companies spare money if they let go of the temporarily employee and circle to new ones, so your chance of staying is barely non-existing. Not to mention, in the 6 months, they don't need a reason to let you go, other than to say it doesn't work out. Now to the story. The first 2 jobs I got through ZC. I try hard to impress them, doing overtime, work more outside my job description, always being on time and never be sick. I ignored my mental problems and drowned them at home to endure everything. However, I wouldn't be here if I got hired. This story takes place in 2018, my 4th job, a factory where I have to pack and sort stuff. However, now I was far less enthusiastic, no overtime, keeping to my job description, but I still was always on time and stayed my 40 hours week. However, the manager demanded overtime nearly daily. I wasn't going to do it, not for minimum wage, and she didn't like it, but I was doing my job, so I believe she kept me in for the full 6 months before they let me go. But then, I made an absolute fatal mistake by daring to get sick. I got a cyst very close to my private area, and I could barely walk, stand, or even sit. Laying was uncomfortable, but at least not painful. I went to the doctor, got antibiotics, and a doctor's note for 7 days. 5 for the antibiotics, and 2 to see if it helped enough. I called in my job to state I was sick for a week, but my manager demanded I gave it to her in person or she would let me go then and there. Now I was annoyed, tired, and in pain that I have to go in, since I was just in my 2nd month working there, so I accepted and my parents drove me in. I waddled like an X-legged penguin through the factory into her office. She didn't saw me walk since she was writing something. I put the doctor's notice on her desk, close to some other documents. She looked up at me and started talking. A lot! Now, you can imagine that condescending Karen tone in her voice. She started lecturing me how she dislikes I don't do overtime, and now that I'm lazy and went to the doctor to get a week of paid vacation, that I need to work on my working morale and that my chances of getting hired are very slim and I need to put in 110% if I want to have a chance. Now, my pain around my private area started worsening due to me standing, so I barely listened to her after that, but I noticed her voice got louder and louder and she somehow talked herself into rage, nearly yelling at this point, and I felt my stomach started turning. I started my strategies to keep my stomach calm since I knew it would be maybe a few minutes of her complaining before I can leave. I tried to cut in to explain that I need to go home to rest, but she had none of it and interrupt me, telling me how disrespectful it is to interrupt some. The irony, lel. Cue my malicious compliance. I stopped calming down my stomach and let it does what it want to do, and surprise, not even after a minute, everything comes out hitting her desk and covers some of her documents and half of my doctor's note. Her face was absolutely priceless, though I wished I could enjoyed it more, next to my pain and new taste. After her initial shock and silence, she finally sent me home to rest. I still think about it till today. After the week, I came back rather healthy, and I got pulled into her office where she and another boss/manager waited for me. After a few words back and forth, they asked me why I didn't even try turn around as I vomited since I apparently destroyed some important documents. And even though I was not obligated to it, I explained the cyst I had, that I couldn't even walk, stand, or turn around without a lot of pain, let alone going to the next restroom or trash bin, and that I shouldn't even been there in the first place since a doctor's note can be handed over after I came back. The other manager boss looked super pissy at my manager. After more unimportant back and forth, I returned back to work. I still got let go after the 6th month, but I wasn't sorry about this job. I then decided to start focusing on my mental health and my addiction problem. For the last bit of fact, the manager was gone quickly after me and the factory was destroyed end of 2024. According to some of my old colleagues, they were constantly firing and more people were quitting on their own. The next one is an entitled People Story. I've spoken of bits of this stuff in other posts, but I had to learn the hard way my sister can't be loaned money. She never liked paying it back, and I had to remind her a lot. There weren't many times in my 20s she borrowed from me. She borrowed stuff more than money then. I made the mistake of lending her my NES, and her cats destroyed it. And speaking of cats, a decade ago she had to have a cat put down, and she called me begging I drive over and help her. She and all her kids pile into my old car, and we went to the vet. The elderly cat had broken its leg badly and may have been hit by a car or even kicked from what the vet told us. We had this big emotional farewell of my sister's cat passing away. And then right in the middle of it, my sister looks at me while sobbing and said, "Da foxtrot, can you pay for it?" She sandbagged me in the middle of that in front of the kids. It took her months before she paid me back, and was embittered when she finally did. I think she was hoping I'd just let it go for the sake of the cat. Never mind, she also dumped a sickly cat on me for years and barely saw it at all. Then lost her mind, calling it her baby, and said I was just giving up when the vet said the cat needed to be put down. There were a couple of other small money-lending situations during that time. I can't remember for what, but like always it was a chore to get paid back. And while it's not lending per se, once around that time I paid a visit to my sister and was very tired when I was at her house. So I took a nap on her couch. I had a habit of taking my wallet, phone, and anything else in my pockets and putting them in my hat on the end table before sleeping on the couch. Well, after I woke up, I found my stuff on the floor. My nephews had gone through the stuff in my hat and scattered it on the floor. They did this once when stealing my mother's purse to look for money in it. They thankfully didn't steal the cash in my wallet, but they stole all the loose change I had sitting in that hat. I was furious and demanded my sister get it all back, and she was basically like, "Oh, lighten up, it's just some loose change." But she willingly let it happen, and as many know from reading my other posts, is an absolutely terrible parent. Her attitude about it pissed me off, so I demanded all that change back and even pointed out what kind of poor example she was setting for her kids. She tried to brush me off and say they were just kids, but I pointed out how she let them steal from me and how I wouldn't let that happen to her. So what kind of example was she setting by not punishing her kids for stealing? My sister ended up looking resigned to the fact I wasn't letting it go. She called her kids into the living room and told them to give the money back. They tried to deny it with crap-eating grins until I pointed out the facts, and then they started crying because they didn't want to give it back. They had to go into their rooms and look for it. They only found about 2/3 of it to return to me, but enough of an example was made. They never stole money from me again. My sister acted like I went too far, and I told her those boys needed that discipline or they'd never stop. After my sister destroyed her marriage and she and her husband split, she ended up moving into an old trailer on our family property. She had $14,000 to her name from her half of the house sale when she and her ex split, manufactured home in a trailer park. After moving in, she was asked about getting a job. Then she'd get weepy and say she wanted to spend the summer with her kids, and couldn't imagine not having that time with them. We were like, "Okay, fair, but you'll get a job once the kids go back to school, right?" My sister promised she'd get that job once summer ended. Well, summer ended and she didn't get the job. And when confronted again, she used crocodile tears and whined that she couldn't imagine being away from her boys even though they were in school and she was just hiding in the old trailer all day or going out drinking with friends. This confrontation happened multiple times. Eventually my sister spent herself into a hole and begged her soon-to-be ex-husband to get back together with her, so he moved into the trailer, but my sister told everyone it was his idea, and she even made him buy her a couple of dogs. She was also completely ungrateful when he bought her a refurbished fridge. Soon enough, he couldn't take it anymore and started house hunting. That's when my sister really had no choice but to finally get a job. My sister finally got a job to have her own income, and then she decided she wanted a brand new trailer. I didn't find out for years that she'd talked our grandparents into completely signing for the trailer's mortgage. My sister also had to get her water and power from my house, which is a sub-building I rent from our parents. Well, she doubled my electric bill and would pay me her half in cash. but she often delayed for months. People told me over and over again to shut her power off since she wouldn't pay. But my nephews were living in there with her 5 days a week. I couldn't cut the power and leave them cold. I was paying the power bill by check, and then my sister convinced me to pay it digitally through her phone, which took like 5 minutes each time it was done. And no matter what kind of day she had or was having, she'd hem or haw about paying the bill. It was out of my damn account, and I had to force her to get on her phone and do it almost every time. And then there was the money she owed me. In winter, she drove my bill up to over $500 a month. I'm on a fixed income, and that was basically half what I got a month back then. And she wasn't paying her half. So I started keeping a record on paper of how much she owed. She really didn't like finding out about that. Once I confronted my sister over how she kept going out to bars with friends and spending so much on booze and other things when she owed me hundreds of dollars. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I'm not changing my life for your sake." So I doubled down on making her pay me back. She owed me around $500 at the time and showed up at my door with a $100 bill and acted like that was enough. I took the $100 and said she had $400 left to pay. She looked at me like I had two heads and said, "But I paid you." And I said, "You made a payment. You didn't pay at all." She gave me that look like it didn't mentally compute and repeated, "But I paid you." And I had to tell her $100 is not $500. You still owe the rest. She frowned and walked off. I knew what she was doing. She was trying to shortchange me and make me call it even. But I didn't. Before long, I stopped paying the electric bill digitally and went back to paying with a check because my sister always made it such a pain. When my sister finally noticed, she was like, "Why would you pay with a check in the mail when we can just use my phone?" And I told her to her face that it's because she acted so dramatic every time it was time to pay and made it a complete hassle just to do it every month when it took so little time. She couldn't even retort, just looked away with a bitter face. She asked me the same thing one more time on another day, and I gave her the same reply. At this point, I think it was more about control than the money. My sister wanted me dependent on her. She went through a bad phase of trying to mom me after moving into the new trailer, and I had to tell her off for it. But she was also constantly trying to get me to pick her over our mother. Our last confrontation made it clear that was not going to happen. My sister eventually paid her debts to me off, but she racked them right back up again. Around this time, she had a terrible boyfriend that only made her worse. She wasn't paying her half of the power bill at all and just kept stalling whenever asked. Our mother got involved and had it out with her. She went down there and yelled at her that I'm on a fixed income and she was draining me financially. Soon I got a forced apology and a promise for repayment. She and her boyfriend paid me a few hundred, and that helped get me through the holidays. But the debt was racked right back up again. My sister owed me a lot and then asked for a loan of $100 twice on top of it. She gave me that classic line drug addicts use, "You know I'm good to pay you back." She freaking wasn't. She was spending most of her money on drugs and booze. She didn't even buy winter clothes for her children. I had to buy them after my youngest nephew came to me in a t-shirt and shorts in 39 degrees. And not counting the $200 I spent on those clothes, and another $120 I gave her out of pity later, she owed me $800, and still does. That's money I'll probably never see again, but I'm not gonna forget it, that's for sure. The last time I saw my sister, we got in a shouting match. And among the things I yelled at her, I brought up the $800 she owes me. She made a shocked face that tells me she totally forgot, and then she quickly yelled about something else. It's not like she'll ever willingly pay it back. I've got no proof to take her to small claims court with either. Not that she has the money. She keeps moving to someplace else like every 6 months because she doesn't have a stable income. The thing that got my sister evicted from the family property was Thanksgiving 2023. We went out for Chinese food because no one wanted to cook, and my sister went to go gamble in the room with all those machines in the back by the bar. She spent most of the dinner back there and then came back bragging about how she'd won $130, and then dropped the money on the table in front of us with a big smile on her face. Never mind, she owed us all money. Me $800 and our parents and grandparents thousands. She made 2 payments to our grandparents after being evicted, and none of us have seen a dime from her since. That Thanksgiving at my sister smugly returned to the table, she started blatantly ignoring most of us. I tried to talk to her repeatedly, and our stepfather finally called her out. It resulted in a big scene, and my sister took her kids and stormed out. Our mother trailed after to try and calm her down, but my sister spit venom at her. Our mother finally hit her breaking point and told her she could get the hell off her property. She drew up a written eviction later. My sister left us with her trailer mortgage since her name wasn't on it and basically just walked away to go do drugs with her next boyfriend. Anyway, thank you for watching.